Maybe this will be it. Maybe I'll just cut this
Yeah,
and then I'll just put it in the front. Content warning about sexual assault and suicidality. Yeah.
That sounds like don't use that.
Well, I'll use all of this.
No, no, it sounds like you're laughing about
Well, it's
it.
my issues. Let me laugh about it.
So Jonathan,
Yes.
have you ever soaked before?
That's what you're gonna start with?
So you know what it is.
Yeah. Why do I know what it is?
Why don't we just talk about some sex?
Let's
I
talk
thought-
about some sex.
I thought it would be good before we do more theoretical and intellectual episode on sex and theological episode on sex. We did a more personal episode on sex. So today I think we'll just have a conversation
Mm-hmm.
from our personal experience, sexuality, what sex means to us, how fundamental it is to our identity, I guess, something along those lines.
Yeah.
I think for me, one of the first things that I think of, I mean, if I'm thinking like chronologically in my life, is pornography.
Oh.
Actually,
Oh, I wasn't even thinking about porn.
That's good. Maybe.
I
Perhaps.
mean, I just think porn and sex are like different. I guess they're categorized differently in my mind.
Right. One of the reasons porn came to my mind is because one of the avenues that I learned that sex was shameful was through porn.
Oh.
Yeah. Like I don't know when I started perusing the internet for internet images of naked women, but it was at a very young age. And obviously you're not too smart when you're, 6 or 7 years old or however old I was. I know I was really young.
Yeah.
But I remember I literally printed out the pictures.
Damn, my man is old school.
On a Kodak little white printer. I printed them out and I put them in a binder.
Damn, what? You're an organized young man, dude.
Damn straight. And I was like showing them to friends. And I got caught because obviously you get caught when you have it in a binder. And I didn't know what a history was. I didn't know that history was even a thing.
Huh? How did that come about? I think I was introduced to porn by friends.
Yeah.
In
I
elementary school.
think friends introduced me as well.
Yeah.
But also,
But then I didn't like do anything with it for a while. And then in like middle school, people were talking about like masturbating.
Yeah.
They made it seem like everyone does it. And I was like, am I fucking weird for not doing it?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
I feel like that's everybody's experience. So everybody's talking like they do that. Literally, it's one guy who started a little bit early. But yeah, similar experience.
Okay.
I think there wasn't any masturbation going on with that at that really early age, and it wasn't until like middle school.
Yeah.
But no, so I was caught, and yeah, I was reprimanded for it, and it felt wrong when I was doing it as well, right? So there was already an implicit knowledge that what I was doing was wrong, right?
Right.
That I had to do it when my mom wasn't in the living room, and I was sort of sneaking, and I was like listening to every step and every sound that's going on in the back room, like, oh, is she coming? Is she not? Right?
Yeah.
But it really hit every time I was caught, because that wasn't the only time that I was caught with porn, and it was like, man, this is shameful. This is just a confession at this point, Reverend. Like,
Okay, so your first interaction with sexuality was, it sounds like, at least in memory, surrounded with shame, or surrounded by shame.
Perhaps, yeah. I mean, they're obviously not just shame, right? Like excitement and other, positive emotions that are elicited by these visual stimuli.
Yeah.
So not just shame, but shame definitely permeates a lot of the experiences for sure, right?
Yeah.
And it sort of takes away from all of the positive emotions as well, right?
Where do you think the shame was coming from? Because there's a difference between like, this is bad, I don't want to get caught privacy, and also just it being private and it's embarrassing to be caught doing a private act.
It might have been more of the latter option there
Okay.
than the former. I don't think my mom scolded me too hard. I think it was more like, bro, like, what are you doing? Like, just, you can't be printing this stuff out. Look at how much ink it's taking up. Like, come on. But it definitely switched to the former type of shame when I was in middle school and high school.
Yeah.
In middle school and high school, especially, around the time when I started masturbating too.
Mm.
That is when a lot of the, we'll call it true shame,
Sure. Yeah.
kicked in. And a lot of that was like, I felt very strongly about it.
Mm. Prior to any like messaging that you heard?
No, I don't know about prior to any messaging,
Mm-hmm.
but the messaging that I was receiving was pretty clear from church, from pastors,
Yeah.
from parental figures. It was that this should not be done. This
Like,
is
period.
This is a shameful act. This is wrong.
Yeah.
You're using these people for your own pleasure, your own selfish gain,
Yeah.
and it leads to addiction. It leads to harm in your life. It'll harm you in ways relating to the act. It'll harm you sexually
Mm.
for you to continue down this path. That was a lot of the messaging that I was hearing.
Do you know when you heard that first?
Probably around middle school-ish.
And from where?
From church, mainly. Yeah.
Like during Sunday services or?
During Sunday services, I grew up Catholic, so
Yeah.
it was also in catechism that I learned it. Then eventually in youth group, it was pretty big because obviously, it's going to be an issue for middle school boys.
Yeah.
My mom talked to me about it a couple times. And around that time in middle school, my mom remarried and my stepdad, he was a Protestant.
Yeah.
And that's when we started going to a Protestant church.
Mm-hmm.
And he was really big on the whole porn recovery thing. And he was very vocal to me about his own struggles with porn. And that definitely made me very introspective and self-reflective about my own personal experiences with porn and masturbation.
Yeah.
And I had a couple of really good Christian friends as well during that time. And we would all sort of feel the same way. We even had an accountability group at one point.
Damn. What the heck?
I think I'm still in the group chat, actually. That the group chat grew. Like, we kept adding people.
What? How old were you when it started?
That group chat was probably grade 11. But I was accountable to different people
Throughout
at different times.
Yeah.
Before that group chat started.
Why? No, like I genuinely I'll share my whole thing with masturbation, I guess, afterwards. But yeah, like it's that's such a big divergence from my story.
Uh-huh.
That
I don't why?
Yeah, why did you feel like you needed to have other people in your
Okay, so I think it's so hard looking back because you don't know what you're retroactively applying to the past and how you actually felt. But I think one thing that I definitely felt that rang really true for during that period was that I felt trapped. Like I felt in the seat of an addiction. I felt that I had no choice but to masturbate, but to watch porn. Like, oh, you want to go play basketball with your friends? No, you have no choice. Like, I want this right now, and you're gonna do it for me. Like the body's like crying out.
Really?
Yeah.
You felt like that? Like
maybe not like to that extent, but like mentally and then being introspective about it and reflecting on it, I felt helpless. Like I wanted to be able to, control myself and I like be a mature person that isn't just pulled this and that way by their passions, right?
Yeah. For me, I mean, first of all, I would never fucking join an accountability group. There's no way in hell that would even come across my mind. I wouldn't even, there's no way I'd start one or join one, just straight up. Just like, no. Like, this is a me thing. I'm fucking dealing with it or not dealing with it, whatever. But I guess underlying that, there's shame there. But I think when I first got shown images by like friends when I was younger, I was just like, I didn't get it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like a badge of honor thing. It was just like a here, see, look at this kind of thing. And so we didn't really talk about it. And then middle school, the whole like we all do it, right, guys, kind of thing happened. I was like, fucking, I don't do it. Like, I gotta do it. So I did that, but it wasn't like to porn. It was like, I think it was like some sexy music video or some shit. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, that's how everybody starts, right?
Yeah, like those two weren't connected for me. Like masturbation and porn weren't connected in that instance, or in the inception of my masturbatory career.
Your sexual consciousness.
Exactly. The awakening. I mean, the shame for me for sure came from, there's this one church retreat I remember so vividly. It might have been my first like youth retreat at DMC. We had a guest pastor.
Okay.
It's not like he did a bad job or anything, but like he talked about his own experience with porn, and it's like, I don't remember why it was bad, why he said it was bad. I don't remember the reasons, but I remember the emotional content, the intensity.
Yeah.
And I remember, I think like the praise leader at the time, the youth praise leader at the time, and him like went out for a talk for like 2 hours after that night. So, I'm guessing that's
so classic.
like it was like an intense day. And I'm like, oh shit, this is like a thing, like a big thing. Right? Like maybe I knew it was a thing, I just didn't know it's like a big thing.
Right.
Oh, and then I was asking you about like when you get horny and shit. Or like, because like for me, it wasn't like I need to do it now.
Right.
And it got even more clear, this pattern, as I grew up. Because like when I'm like 16 or younger or whatever, anything gives you a boner. You're always ready. Now I'm not even that old, and I'm like, nah, maybe not today.
Let's go climbing.
Yeah, I'd rather climb. But
yes,
boredom was huge. Like stress was huge. Anytime I had a particularly stressful day, even without me knowing, like that would be the thing that I end up going to, just because that was like a very easy way to hit like some sort of like high.
Yeah, I think, I mean, if I'm gonna open up, that just hit me like pretty deep, because I think that's still true for me.
Yeah, no, it's 100% more. It's more true if anything than like, it's not because I enjoyed the act of it as much as like I needed to get away.
Yeah, and I think when I was younger, I didn't know that. That underlying my problem with porn was a deeper issue with anxiety.
Yeah.
And an inability to deal with stress.
Right.
And I think that's still the case. And now it's gone beyond just masturbation and to sexual relations with women.
Right.
And it fulfills this exact same function.
Yeah. And I don't want to I don't want this to become like pathologizing masturbatory behavior of like middle school kids, because like there was definitely me when I was younger that was like, oh, my dick is hard, let's like do something fun with it, because I don't know how much of it was I need to do it now, because that's what you were saying, there's some of that for you. Yeah.
And I think one way of like, I don't want to be placing this on my former self when it's not true of my former self, but
don't worry, your former self doesn't exist anymore. You can make shit up about him.
Dang, okay. Say less. Okay. But I think one of the ways of verbalizing what I was doing, like the helplessness that I felt, it felt like it was the only way to stop an oncoming panic attack, something like that. Like if I didn't do this, my mind's just gonna keep on having reiterating thoughts, ruminating, blah, 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 right? And one of the thoughts that comes up and pops up is like, go watch some porn, man. Make you feel better.
Yeah.
And I think another reason why I wanted to stop was because right after it's done,
you don't feel all that much better.
No.
Yeah.
You don't just not feel better.
Yeah.
You'll feel worse. And of course there's the shame aspects to it. So there's the additional elements that you add from a Christian theological purity framework.
Yeah.
So you have that. So that doesn't make the picture any better, right? But push that aside. If at the bottom of we'll call it my porn problem, is anxiety, this doesn't actually get rid of the anxiety.
No.
Momentarily, okay, yeah, everything's fine. But afterwards, it's like, okay, you've just wasted time. If I'm anxious about like a test tomorrow, it's like, well, you've just spent 30 minutes, an hour doing this thing that you could have been studying.
Yeah.
So now your performance on the test is going to be an hour less proficient than it could have been if you could have just controlled yourself.
I don't think I had stuff like that. I'll be honest, because I don't know if I had like deadlines that I cared about, which is a weird thing to say. But I had a lot of like dread, and honestly, I was happy that was gone. Like there was the shame that came afterwards, but I think a lot of it was being told that it was shameful, or like having learned that it was shameful.
Yeah.
And a part of it also was like, why can't I deal with this anxiety head on, or like these issues that I'm feeling head on?
Yeah.
Especially when I got older, maybe not so much in the middle school era, because I don't fucking think I was that introspective. But
No, yeah. I think so too. I think it was more about that as well.
Yeah.
Like more of the outside messaging.
yeah, but then there was also like, as I got a little older, and like the external shame got a little bit louder as like talks about sex became more of a thing for like the age group of like 16-year-old boys.
Yeah.
I also liked the reprieve that I got more, or was able to appreciate the reprieve more.
Mm-hmm.
So it was weird in that like there was maybe more shame because there was more that I had been told, but also more like, oh, thank God I don't have to fucking think about killing myself for like an hour. Or like it felt like a reset.
Yeah, for sure.
But you were saying how your relation to porn and masturbation has expanded into your relationship with sex, or with sexual relations with people.
Yeah, definitely true. I think the main anxiety that I was seeking to avoid with porn was something like not being good enough, right? And what better way to be seen as good enough as a man in the 21st century than with female validation.
Okay,
And
this is another like huge divergence from my experience. I think you're a much more like reaching out kind of guy.
Really? What do you mean by that? Like
Both with
reaching out,
accountability, but also like in terms of like sex, like finding a sexual partner requires a level of like reaching out and putting yourself out there, like to be evaluated as desirable by the other sex or by the sex of your choosing.
Yeah.
You have to put yourself out in front of them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I fucking hate that shit. I just hate.
Yeah, no. I get that. I guess I'm not the most confident guy, but I have minimal confidence.
So I have some minimal confidence. Is that what's being implied here?
No, that was not the implication. No. Where I was going with that was that my minimal confidence was enough to break the threshold for the anxiety I felt about rejection. Whereas maybe your anxiety about rejection didn't meet the threshold for your maybe even above minimal confidence. maybe your anxiety was just that much greater than mine, you know?
Have you seen, I know this is gonna sound like a fucking left turn. Have you seen Don Juan? Or Don John, I think might be the actual name of it. Stars Joseph Gordon-Levitt and
no, I haven't seen
Scarlett Johansson, I think. It's like a modern retelling of Don Juan.
Yeah.
It's like some woman's story about some womanizer. Probably started in Italy or some shit, you know? Or in the Iberian Peninsula. Who cares? Fucking. But in Don Juan, or Don John, I don't know. I haven't like looked this up. It's been like 10 years since I watched this. But this guy, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, is the main character, attractive, charismatic. I think he's like rich too. Can seem to like be able to sleep with anybody, but like never finds any sort of satisfaction.
Yeah.
Both in the relationship, but also like in the sexual experience. He'll have sex and he'll go like masturbate.
Right.
And then they fucking watch the movie because I don't want to like not even spoil it because I'm probably gonna get it wrong at this point. But a big part of that was like he couldn't, especially in front of the other gender, he couldn't like stop performing, like stop performing the masculinity or like the things that he thought made people like him or made him valuable. And because of that, it made it hard for him to like engage in a sexual relationship, like more of himself, I guess. And then so he found that in porn and masturbation, because it's like there is no other at that point. Yeah. And that's maybe not the most Kantian thing to do, but like, man, is it liberating.
And was your reason for bringing up this movie because you feel the same?
I am Don Juan without any of the charisma or the money or the conventional like I'm
so none of the essential properties of Don Juan.
I wish I had more of the Don Juaniness, but hey, that's what I think that honestly is one of the reasons why, like in my mind, porn and like sex are separate.
Yeah.
Because for me, porn is an escape, but it's like a solo act. And it's a safe act, and it's just like a me time thing. And none of that translates.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean,
that's crazy.
Maybe
I feel the exact opposite.
Yeah.
Yeah. Porn and masturbation feels like unsafe. to me.
Mm.
Like, it feels superficially safe, right?
Yeah.
In that I'm alone, and as you were saying, like, it's a completely personal and private experience, but it adds absolutely no value to my life. In fact, it only takes away value for me. Whereas with sex, at least, you know, in a committed relationship, the sex it has intimacy building functions. It has, you know, it does a lot of good stuff. It's ideally other oriented, and so it's moral in that way, if morality is essentially other oriented. So I think it makes you better in, if we're talking about, like, you know, building character and virtue and all this stuff, right? I actually am working on a piece titled "The Christian Case for Sex from Masturbation," where I argue that Christians should be having more sex even outside of marriage if you're a chronic masturbator, because it's better for you. It makes you a better person. If you're going to be sexually active already in masturbation, then you might as well go further and be sexually active with another person, because it makes you better. And I don't know when that will be posted, but eventually I'll link it. I'll link it here.
Okay.
I mean, the basic idea is what I'm expressing right now, is that you get either nothing or it detracts from your well-being to masturbate. At least that's my own personal experience.
Yeah.
And I think many people agree with me on that. And then they feel the opposite when it comes to sex. They feel enlivened. They feel, wow, I'm providing this immense pleasure to another person. I'm desirable and desired. I'm building a intimate relationship that has a strong foundation, and I'm working on that foundation as we're doing this act, and yada yada yada. So yeah, I think for me, funnily enough, I am strongly on the opposite side.
So interesting. So interesting. I think,
like, I feel like I get something out of sex, and that sounds bad, right? Because, like, then you know,
what do you think you get?
One thing I get is validation.
Yeah.
From another person, right? I get to be seen in a very visceral way, that I am desirable, that I'm loved. Often it's explicitly stated, these sorts of things. And then again, back to the character thing, I become the type of person that enjoys being other oriented, that enjoys giving pleasure to the other, that enjoys, you know, all that stuff. And I think that is something that is not a superficial addition to one's personal inventory.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if it's necessarily a good thing.
Say more.
Because there's some, like, toxic ways that can be embodied.
Right. Sure.
Like, I have a difficult relationship with sex, to say the least, because I don't want, like, I am so bad at asking for what I want. And I would rather not want. And in those moments, sure, like, I'm other oriented, but the other wants to meet my needs or meet my desires, but because I'm blocking that, because there's like a weird, like, it becomes like a weird game where I would much rather just get my partner to come and, like, don't touch me than the other way around. Yeah. And some people might be like, jokingly, like, great, you know, that works for me, but, like, after a while, like, it becomes like a weird thing, you know, like,
well, because it's not reciprocal.
Yeah, and it's weird to, like,
no partner is gonna watch that and be like, well, okay.
Yeah, they'll be like, why?
Like, no partner in a loving, good,
and,
healthy,
like,
relationship.
And also, like, even in a non-healthy relationship, I'm sure they'll be like, why does my partner not want me to, like,
right?
reciprocate?
Like, even just, like, pure egoism. Yeah. Like, do they not want me more? Like,
yeah, because people, like, can sense the block, I'm sure. You know,
right. And it can be internalized as, oh, does he think I'm fat? Does he think I'm ugly? Does he not like this? Am I not attractive to him? Like, that sort of thing.
Yeah. And
for sure.
That's why, you know, in the words of Miles Morales, I'm gonna do my own thing, you know?
Okay. But I mean, ultimately you're not being other oriented, right? In the situation that you're describing. Because the person that you're caring about the most is yourself, in guarding your own security and blocking off your desires.
I think it's
in not wanting to be vulnerable, you're halting the other from having these growth starting experiences,
but to, like,
right?
to borrow, like, I'm not a big Maslow how do you adjectify
Abrahamic. We'll go with
Abraham? Very fitting for a theology podcast. But
Exactly.
it seems like it's a base interaction,
Okay.
and I don't think that's true. But like, I'm engaging in like as if it were physiological needs front and center, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I am meeting my other's physiological needs,
Sure.
but I am protecting maybe a higher order need of mine,
Mm-hmm.
while disregarding maybe a higher order need of theirs, while disregarding
100%.
a base need of mine. I don't know.
Yes. Yeah. That's very well put.
So I don't know if I
So that's not good.
maybe, but like I think it's more complicated than like practicing an other focusedness, especially when the practice of it is reinforcing a trade-off that I am clearly like inherently making, maybe like without even thinking about it too much.
I'm trying to think of like a non-sexual example where you'd be sacrificing your own lower level hierarchical need to protect your higher order hierarchical need and not give that to the other. Like you don't go to dinner with your parents because you're scared of having a better relationship with your parents, scared of being vulnerable, having intimacy, blah blah blah. But you're also depriving your parents of that
But then you would have to
that
go
intimacy
and
and that emotion.
You would have to go.
But you would, so you would be preparing the meal and then you leave to go to your room.
I think a great
and then
example
dip.
is like,
So
yeah, I think.
But you'd agree that was wrong, right? Like,
No, I think
you
so. Like, think about it this way.
well-
Think about it. Have you read The Road or watched The Road?
at least not ideal.
It's not
No,
ideal,
I haven't.
but I think it's like hard to classify. Like, I think parents' relationship with children is a very interesting analog. But yeah, in The Road, you have this guy. He has his son, and I think the name of the son is just Boy. I don't like The
Yeah.
Road, and I understand, and I know people love The Road. Not to say. Anyway, fucking.
Stop going to movie critic
I
mode.
know,
man. Come
or
on,
like book critic. Anyway,
get to the point. Get to the point.
sorry.
Oh, it's a book.
I just wanted to make sure my criticism was like, okay, it doesn't matter. In it, the man is hyper focused on the boy's survival,
Right.
and doesn't let him be a boy.
Mhm.
And yeah, that sucks. You know, it's not ideal, but I don't think people would read The Road or watch The Road, starring Viggo Mortensen, Aragorn, and be like,
Hey.
Aragorn is a bad man. You know, they'd be like, that's some fatherly, like that's I don't know, like something fathers do.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. But I think we can agree, at least on this, that circumstances could be better.
100%.
That seems to be a big difference. Masturbation versus sex. Like, what is safer?
Yeah.
The connection between the two, the relationship between the
Yeah.
two.
I don't even want to talk about like what's better morally. Like I genuinely think, like for me, masturbation is always felt, and I can't
Mhm.
imagine a world where it doesn't continue to feel more safe.
Right.
It seems like we're circling around this idea of like the value or like goodness or badness of sex, maybe sexuality, because I think just like from memory, I don't think I've had like a sex sermon or I've like listened to a sex sermon
Mhm.
where it wasn't like this is unequivocally bad.
Yeah, for sure. I've heard Dennis Prager and Ben Shapiro argue on this very point.
Okay, well,
And-
you enlighten me.
No, I don't think it was Ben Shapiro. It was Dennis Prager and some other guy. I think the other guy was Christian. But you agree with Dennis Prager.
Wow, me and Dennis have something in common.
Yeah. But the other guy was taking the hard line.
Hmm.
It's absolutely, objectively, in all times, in all places, wrong.
Masturbation or like
Masturbation, yeah. And Dennis was like, okay, so somebody's wife, terminally ill. He's been with her for 50 years. Can't imagine being with anybody else. She passes away. He's absolutely, completely distraught. Doesn't want to engage in intimate relationships with anybody else. And he feels a certain way religiously
Sure.
about
remarriage or something.
remarriage and sex with other people outside of that covenant relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And so he masturbates to fulfill his urges. What's wrong with that? That was Dennis Prager's point. Now I think there is something wrong with that. Maybe I shouldn't use the language of wrongness, but there is a better way of going through the circumstances, even though the way that the circumstances are conducted is understandable.
Yeah, I don't know if I would hop on board there, but like, I can see where you're coming from. I think, like I said in the beginning, this was a weird turn for me to talk about masturbation in porn. Just because, like, it's not even like, it's not even sex.
Not even sex.
But I do think, especially early on, those attitudes probably did, mess with my sexual. Like, we talked about this, that, like, the first time I had sex, like, my memory of it is, like, disembodied. Like, I'm watching kind of myself fucking fumble through the whole thing and, like, not really have the best time.
Yeah.
And, like, I don't know exactly why that was. I don't think it's 100% fair to, like, blame the Christian sort of upbringing. Maybe, because, like, it kind of seeps into school too. Like, there's a lot of, like, black and white messaging that you hear in school as well about, like, this how to do it, this, and then if you fuck up, like, it's gonna go bad or some shit. And then there was a lot of me in the moment, like, making sure I don't fuck shit up, you know, like.
Yeah. No,
like, there's, like, rules that I felt like I had to, like, really follow.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then afterwards, there's just, like, a more from the partner, this, like, feeling of, like, what do we just do? And then me, like, because again, I'm so disconnected from my body. We talked about this. As a mental health expert, I probably should be better by now. But even to this day, you know, I can send my mind to somewhere else while my body goes through the motions. Yeah. So yeah, there was this moment where I saw my partner, I think, be in a little more shock. I don't know, because I wasn't feeling what I was. I don't know what I wasn't feeling. Yeah. And then so it was just like, oh, is she okay? And then I don't know why, you know, what was going on through her head, or like, I guess one thing that's hugely I said this already. There is no other in, like, masturbation.
Yeah.
In a sexual relation, it's like there's no moment where there is no other, you know?
There is no moment where there's an absence of the other. Yeah.
And especially with my weird.
That's it. That's an amazing thought, by the way.
But it sucks. It's no, it sucks. It's a bad thing. It's a bad thing. Because, like, the prologue to the event was fine. It was like the awkward high school kiddie, whatever, like, stupid shit.
Yeah.
You know, that's fine. I can look back and be like, that was some, like, corny ass cute shit. The actual experience of it was, like, again, disembodied in my memory. And then afterwards, it was like, and maybe I was, like, reading too much. Yeah, reading too much into it, especially because, especially back then, I had, like, an excessive guilt complex. But, like, I saw my partner feeling bad, or, like, not feeling the best afterwards, and then I felt bad. And it's like, dude, why can't I just have, like, you don't have that. You don't have that when you're, you don't have any of that. You don't have to deal with your own issues and now someone else's issues when you're both fucking, like, a youngin', and no one has figured out what they're doing.
And yet,
sucks.
It is not good. And yet,
sometimes
it is not good. That man should be alone.
Sometimes they should be alone. You know.
Sometimes, sure.
There needs to be moments where there is an absence of the other.
And you know what? With all canonical biblical tradition, Jesus was alone.
There you go.
But I think that's a great way of describing the doctrine of one flesh. Yeah.
Sure.
The never absence of the other.
Yeah, and that sucks.
I
guess my take is just sex is bad. Just don't ever have it. If you can avoid it, just avoid it. You guys can both, like, mutually masturbate, you know?
Like, in separate rooms.
And then also add a 30-minute buffer time so, like, they could do their own post-coital care for themselves. What a great thing! Like, what a great place the world would be.
That's I know. I know you're being facetious a little bit, and, like, not facetious and completely serious a little bit as well.
Yeah.
But clearly you can see at least how if you were to write, like, a manual for living, this wouldn't be in it.
Like, in an ideal setting, no.
No. Yeah. And so the argument isn't going to work for every person.
Sure.
Because tons of people have sexual trauma, right?
Yeah.
And you know what? You might damage more people if you start engaging with others sexually, right? And
yeah,
I think clearly you can see that the ideal would be intimacy, especially if you're a sexual person and you haven't decided to, you know, take the priestly vows or whatever and go into celibacy.
So you think the point of sexuality is intimacy?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Or, I mean, I would have to think more about the necessary and sufficient conditions, but that's 100%, that's the biggest part of it.
I agree with you in the sense that in an ideal situation of like me maybe like writing down best case scenarios, you wouldn't have people like me in the good place, you know?
Yeah.
But one of the reasons why I wanted to do a more personal account of sex before we start talking about sex in a maybe more academic sense, because I think there's probably as much as there are like varied voices and people like entering this sort of dialogue at different stages, there's probably people like me that are wholly terrified
yeah.
of opening up to the point that, like, I don't know, an ideal quote unquote sexual experience requires.
Yeah, yeah. So my question is, do you see that as a lack in yourself?
Yeah.
Like, if I could snap it away, would you?
Sure. But like I consider me not being able to climb a V8 a lack, and I would snap it away if I could. I guess one of the things that like church does is talk about like heaven too much, or like getting into heaven, or like I remember there's one sermon where he was talking about this other pastor who had given this talk.
Okay.
But I heard the story in a different sermon. So like this pastor, I guess is a famous pastor, went to like a conference, was in a hotel, and like some lady like was like hitting on him, I don't know, fucking at the bar,
Okay,
or like
okay, yeah.
and then he was like kind of reciprocating the flirtations. I don't really know exactly what happened, but then she finally like knocked on his door, and then he was there, she was there, and he's like, fuck. And it all sort of hit him, and then he just sort of like booked it. He just like ran, and then he like jumped into the pool.
Right. Yeah. like he fled from sin.
Yeah, exactly. And like, okay, cool, sure.
Yeah. He was probably married too, so
Yeah.
like, obviously.
But
the
imagine a
circumstances
16-year-old
are-
doing that.
Uh-huh.
They would not have friends ever.
See, that's sort of how I lived as a 16-year-old.
Not having friends ever?
No, the same sort of fervor for wanting to protect my purity. I'll say.
Okay.
Yeah. I wore a purity ring until I was like probably around 20 years old, maybe 19 years, 20, 19
Okay.
years old. Yeah. But I would do things like that.
Sorry, what?
Like-
What is the
like-
equivalent of a high schooler version of that?
No, like there's
Give
we
me an
don't have to
example.
do-
Yeah, you gotta give
No,
me.
we don't have to do
say?
equivalence. We don't have to do equivalence.
Okay. Sure.
I was making out with somebody in a car.
Yeah.
And you know, things started to get heaty.
Mhm.
And the other person, my girlfriend at the time, starts to reach her hand into places where I thought, okay, come on, we're not going to cross this line,
Yeah.
right?
You gotta leave room for Jesus.
Gotta leave room for Jesus. So I put the hand over,
Yeah.
and I move it. I'm like, no, right on the shoulder. Fuck.
Yeah.
None of that.
Okay.
Right. And then leave the car.
Okay. Wow.
So stuff like that. And you know, that would happen like often. This person was a Christian as well, and we both felt the same. And
Okay.
I felt like I had a duty to myself and her
Sure.
to protect something that we both felt were our values at the time.
Okay.
So yeah, I understand that.
What if those weren't her values?
Then I probably wouldn't have dated her at the time. At that time in my life.
I see.
Yeah, but perhaps I would have succumbed then. Maybe.
Okay. How did that change then? Because I never had a purity ring, and I don't think there's a part of me that would have. Going back to the and I saw the praise leader talking to the pastor. Like there was a part of me for sure that was like, I wish I could do that sort of like confession,
Relate.
you know?
Yeah.
But there's no part of me that would have done that. And so what I actually thought about purity rings aside, like there was probably no world in which I would have worn a purity ring, just because it like
No possible world.
no possible world. There
No Jonathan Raw counterpart.
exactly. But that being said, I'm like not super pro sex, like personally. Like I'm pro sex.
Like intellectually.
Yeah,
you are.
societally,
Yeah.
you know, politically.
Yeah.
I'm like
Politically.
yeah. You know? For me, little less so.
Yeah.
And like I said, I don't know if purity had anything to do with it. I don't even think I felt all that pure. Maybe because I had sex like in high school, and I was like, I'm already defiled. I'm so maybe it was like a acting out of that feeling. I don't know.
Yeah. You were dirty before
Exactly.
you could even be clean.
Exactly.
You're like,
so what the fuck? Yeah, we talked about this before as well. That like a part of motivation for me to have sex was like I thought I was gonna die at 21.
right.
And so like I was like, I don't want to go.
I don't want to go like Immanuel Kant.
Yeah, I want Jesus to dam me up at the door. You know. I don't know. Yeah, like maybe not that, but
You think Jesus is gonna be dabbing you up at the door? Perpetual Virgin Jesus, possibly. Maybe David. Maybe King David's.
Yeah, let's go. And so that was definitely a part of the like
Totally.
my mind space. And so purity had no room.
Yeah, for sure.
I was like, if I'm gonna go out in like X amount of years, I want to experience life. You know, like I still kind of think like this to this day. Like I feel like if I knew when I was gonna die, I'd be like, yo, I always wanted to try meth before I died. So like, let me just OD on meth. You know, like,
yeah.
So I'm a little bit of a hedonist.
I mean, you could do it the day before. It wouldn't be too bad, you know.
I just want to experience things.
Totally.
So purity doesn't come into that equation. Because look, where could it come into that equation? If I'm thinking like, I'm gonna hit it and quit it with a finality to it, you know, like.
Yeah. I mean, that thought definitely wasn't absent when I had my, how would you say, like sexual conversion. Like when I decided to get rid of my purity ring.
Okay.
And decided that I was gonna have sex now and all this stuff.
How did you convert into the purity thing?
How did I convert into the purity thing? I mean, at least like high school and a little bit after high school, like when I had this girlfriend that I was talking about.
Yeah.
A part of me felt like I gained my autonomy back with it.
Okay.
Like if I can't stop watching porn, what I can do is not have sex. Like, wow, I have power over this. And like you really want to, right? And then you see this other person really wanting to.
Yeah.
And you're like, damn, I'm desirable. But then you're like the cool Christian Korean guy and you're like, no. And you stop it, right? And so that definitely wasn't absent from my thinking. Like I'm, you know, like memorizing like Bible verse or whatever. Like you show up to, or like the classic meme of like, how many chairs can you carry at once, right?
What is this?
Where it's like it's all the Christian guys at church like trying to impress the girls, right?
Oh.
And they're like carrying like 6 chairs at once and they're like trying to get the girl to look at them, right? But it's just to say that there's like
this? I didn't know.
Yeah, how'd you miss that meme? That's a classic like Christian church trope.
I didn't fucking know this. I set up all the chairs for youth group for years, and I wasn't flexing on anybody.
Well, maybe people saw.
I was doing one chair at a time, max. You know, I ain't trying to overexert myself before Sunday service started.
But that's just to say that there's norms in these communities.
Yeah.
And I was fulfilling them well. There was something I could brag about, right? Like, oh yeah, I could have had sex, but you know, I didn't because like, you know, like I'm like strong in the spirit like that. You know what I'm saying? Like I could.
How often how big of that was a thing? Well, I don't know what I just said. How big
of
a thing was that? Like, the words just went in whatever order they wanted to.
It's a good question. I don't know how big that was. I mean, I think if I was to psychoanalyze myself in regards to motivation in general, that would be large.
Okay. I think this is true with guys maybe more than girls because of like quote unquote body count and all that bullshit.
Yes.
But like
100%.
There is, I think, a performance for other guys that guys do with sex.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think I engaged, or maybe I just like, I don't know what happened with me. Like that never happened in my, like I've had like male, like I have male friends. I have mostly male friends.
I have male friends.
Now I sound defensive.
I have black friends.
No, but
I have Asian friends.
I have like 2-3 encounters where a friend said to me, "Look at that girl."
Look at that ass, like that sort of thing.
Did I miss out on the male experience? What the fuck just happened?
I mean, it's a good part to miss out on. to be completely honest. Like you missed out on just a bunch of misogyny. That's all you missed out on. So
Well,
like
like-
it's good.
I don't know how I feel about that. I mean, I'm glad about the missing out on the misogyny part, but I'm not so glad on the missing out part, you know?
Yeah, no, for sure. Totally get that.
Because, yeah, I think when I was with whichever partner, and there was definitely some of it that was like, especially in my more Christian-y days or months or whatever, I was like, oh, I
Months.
definitely shouldn't do this kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And then that was definitely a performance of like Christianity to like some, I don't know, Christian order or whatever. But I think in the moments, more often than not, I was trying to perform for the person right in front of me. If this is what I thought they wanted, I wanted to provide that.
Yeah.
Which
I
is
mean,
weird because
for
I'm
sure.
usually not, like I usually don't take an anxious compliant coping strategy. I am an avoidant personality type through and through. I'm a fucking don't talk to me, everything is okay. Even if I'm open about shit, I am very good at masking how deeply affected I truly am.
Yeah, you are. Yeah,
Thank you.
not a compliment.
But yeah, so like for me to hear you go, I was able to fit the norms or like live out the norms of purity culture.
Yeah, yeah.
How did those things fit into your decision tree as a kid with like a half naked girl you like in front of you kind of
Right.
thing?
Are you trying to say like what the norms of this like how am I dealing with the conflict at this time between the norms of like
or why how are those norms even like salient? Because they're not there.
shit,
Right.
man, I don't know.
Your purity culture bros aren't there.
At the
Like
time.
you could lie to them on the Wednesday meeting or whatever, Friday or whatever
Right.
service.
Maybe I'm just like a Kantian through and through, right? Like, and
I'll pray for you.
I've been born a Kantian and grew up a Kantian. Like, I can't do it with a straight face. Like, I don't know the internal experience of other people's, but my inner voice, my conscience is so loud that I wouldn't be able to. My super ego is just
It's super.
it's an ultra ego, man. It's the maximal ego, like,
Right.
and I've internalized it, and that wouldn't even be an option to go and lie about it.
Mm.
And it also would take away from the glory of it too, right?
Yeah. I mean, I agree, but there's people who like lie about speed runs, you know?
Yeah, exactly. I couldn't do that. Like I white lie. I could like, fudge the numbers a little bit, like say that she was naked in front of me, like, like
Yeah.
make the story a little bit more exaggerated, but never, I could never do that. Just, oh yeah, no. Like we fucked, but we didn't, like that sort of thing. Or no.
We didn't when we did.
Yeah, like we fucked, but I say we didn't. Yeah, I couldn't.
Interesting.
And also I was a virgin then too, so that probably made things easier.
Yeah.
Where it was like, going from 0 to 1 is
It's huge.
right. That's
Huge.
exponential gains,
That's
right? Like,
indeterminate. You know? You can't divide by 0, you know?
the maths
Yeah.
is all I'm saying. So that probably had a lot to do with it as well, right? Like it's
Mm.
easier for me to be like, no, this is like a huge thing
Right.
at 0, at virgin status, then 1. Then you're just like, well, like you said, I'm already dirty, like
Yeah.
sunk
Yeah.
cost.
Yeah. So how did that come about? Because I don't think when I was in high school, probably until I was like 25, when anyone asked me if I was like a virgin or anything, I'd be like, none of your business.
Right.
And people could be like, I know you did, or blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, it's not even my story to tell.
Yeah.
In that there's always another, this always comes back to the fact that there's always a fucking other.
So you only tell the story when they're there too.
Or get a disclosure agreement going, But for what you were saying, it seems like, I guess you can't have accountability without talking about it, but how did that come about?
How did my immersion into purity culture come about?
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of my identity was, being the Christian kid,
Yeah.
And so I was really immersed in
Yeah.
church and youth. I went to Bible college straight out of high school, right?
That's true.
Only for
mean,
a semester, but
But I mean, I
was-
went to a seminary.
but not straight out of high school, right?
That's true.
And I'm listening to like sermons in my free time. I'm reading a lot of C.S. Lewis, and there's a consensus, right? There's absolutely no opposing voice on the issue.
Sure.
And
But that's one thing to be like, I agree with that this is a theological position or the orthodoxy. But there's another to be like, I am going to go and find people to talk about this with. You know what I mean?
Well,
like that's why I think purity culture, like the cultural aspect, I think is huge. Because even if my doctrine was in line with purity culture people, I would never join. I would never
but
be like.
You wouldn't join anything. You wouldn't join a tennis club. You wouldn't join a like, you wouldn't.
That's not true. I was a big boy in church. You know, starting from grade 11, I think I was a pretty big figure in the church.
All right, but okay, yeah, sure, okay, you get that one.
Yeah. So like clearly, if I believed in something, I like was engaged.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I think I reflect the mean more than you do. Like I think you're pretty abnormal in that you weren't affected by these norms.
In what sense? Or what norms? The talking about sex stuff?
Yeah, the talking about sex, that you're saying that you weren't as immersed in the purity culture as I was, even though we had similar communities that we were in, right? But I think that's more abnormal on your part, which maybe goes to the idiosyncrasy of your situation. But I think for me, it was mainly an intellectual thing, or at least I rationalized it that way, that this is orthodoxy. I don't see any consensus. Faith is a huge part of my life, and this is part of faith. And then also I interpret a lot of my experience through that lens. So I talked to you about feeling trapped, having my autonomy stripped away. That feels very real. That's scripture coming to life and having some sort of reality in my life, right? Yeah. Sort of proving the orthodoxy in my life. So I think that was very big. Why do you think you weren't affected by the norms? I mean, you don't seem to have been affected by very many Christian norms.
I mean, definitely was affected by, but just was engaged in a different way.
Like engaged counterculturally.
Yeah, definitely.
You engaged antagonistically.
Yeah, a little bit, for sure. But I think, to quote my boy Kendrick, all's my life I had to fight.
All's my life I had to fight.
Not so much as a Compton boy, but like, we were talking about this just before we started recording, but like being poor. And like church is a middle class space, or our church is a very middle class space. And like I grew up in like a poor neighborhood, and then by like grade 4 we moved out, and so instead of being normal in a poor neighborhood, I was a poor kid in like a middle class neighborhood. Right. And that's a weird dynamic, especially when you don't understand class conflict, like as a fucking 8-year-old kid. I just know things are different,
Yeah, they should have gave you a Das Kapital instead of a children's Bible.
Exactly.
Or the Communist Manifesto.
It's just weird. Like, people are asking like, oh, what are your parents? They're like, what the fuck does that matter? Like, are parents home? I'm like, my parents are never home. Is that a thing that you're supposed to have? Like, growing up in a poor neighborhood, you don't see that because everybody's kids are latchkey kids. And so stuff like that never really was as big of a deal. And then when I got into like the middle class neighborhood, it was like, I could feel the judgment a little bit. Not by everybody's families, but like just in the air. And so, I was definitely countercultural even from a young age.
So you think you took that into church? Like this sort of like...
Not explicitly, not like rebellion, but I knew that I already felt off. Okay. And like I said, when I saw the praise leader...
So you felt like an outsider, basically, right?
Yeah. When I saw that praise leader talk to the pastor, I was like, I wish I could be like that. Yes. I think this is true. Maybe I'm like overgeneralizing way too much, but I think this is true for a lot of people who are countercultural. Like we're countercultural sort of not by choice in the beginning. Right. And there's a deep sense of like, I wish I didn't have to fight. Yeah. And so I think that's how I came into it. But the sex thing, just like not talk about sex, like I don't know how true it is or how often guys actually talk about sex, because in my experience, never talked about. I would never talk about that with my friends, like period.
When you say talk about sex, are you talking about like sexuality more broadly, or are you talking about like sex?
Really, honestly, sexuality more broadly, okay. But like, but there's definitely a hard line that I drew when it came to talking about sex. I was like, this is not between me and my boys. This is between me and whoever the girl is, Like, this doesn't fucking matter to you. why the fuck are you talking about this to me?
Yeah. So you're a gentleman, is what you're saying. You don't kiss and tell.
Yeah, I don't kiss and tell. Yeah, I don't kiss and tell.
All right. Chivalry's not dead.
I do think that can become. I think that can be a little toxic, and I think there was a little bit of that, of me using that to like cover up whatever I felt about sex.
Mm-hmm.
But I also do believe in like privacy. Like I've always valued privacy to a high deal. Like I didn't like when people talked about me, even in a good way. I was just like, keep my name out of your fucking mouth. You know? Damn. So like I was always a little bit more private, maybe.
Okay.
So that also helped me sort of maybe skirt away from.
Okay.
That
That makes sense. It is just very interesting how like none of the purity norms seem to have like gotten really deep into you, you know?
Why do you say that?
I mean, the reason I'm saying it now is because you seem shocked that they would be so deeply embedded within me.
Oh, okay. I see. I guess maybe the values, maybe like I adopted the values to some extent, right? But the norm, the behavior around it, I don't think I would.
You had values, and one of the values was like, you know, some sort of like experiential breadth, like this like Camusian hedonism.
Yeah.
Right? And so maybe that value was just higher order than the Christian ones you were receiving.
Oh, okay. So I see what you mean.
So it's like, okay, I shouldn't, you know, have sex with my girlfriend, but you know, I'm probably gonna die at 21, so let's go ahead and do it. Or is it God doesn't care about what I do in my bedroom? Like not even.
Oh no,
like,
so it definitely wasn't
completely unorthodox. Like
no, it definitely wasn't like completely unorthodox, and I don't think it's possible, especially given how like embedded in the church I was. Like it would seep in, right? Culture, you can't escape culture. But it was like the first one, and like this isn't the mental health episode, but like like the experience of life sucked.
Yeah.
Like, you know, my first girlfriend in high school, we dated for like a year, and it's still one of the top years of my life, but it's maybe not the top year of my life, which is a good thing, I guess, because I'm fucking 28, and if I fucking peaked at 16, that would have been very sad. But it was top tier.
That's good.
You know, it was like a top year of my life for a while, for like a long time. Yeah. I thought that was a good year. Mm-hmm. But if you ask that person back then, and probably even now, they would probably be like, yeah, no, he was never happy. Mm. So like, I didn't enjoy life, and I didn't know how I could justify my existence. Like life wasn't fun, nor did I feel like I was providing any value, like positive value. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, honestly, can't keep going like this. But everyone and their moms talks about how great sex is. I gotta at least try it once. You know, like I gotta.
Maybe this will save me.
Not even. It wasn't that. It wasn't even it'll save me. It was like I just gotta try it. You know, there was a part of me in my less depressed days where it's like, oh no, this is not like a quote unquote Christian thing to do. Mm-hmm. So it did like come, like there was thoughts of those types of like more puritanical thoughts in there somewhere. Right. But yeah, it was like, I just want to try it. Was the thing that like tipped the first domino or whatever.
Right.
And then afterwards it was like we got into those positions, more scandalous positions. You know, they'll be like, oh, don't go into each other's homes, like those risky, quote unquote, Christian, like risky situations. Right, because like first we were poor, but also like it was like a safe space.
Sure.
And then we got physically closer because like it felt good, right? Like I want to be physically closer to this person at like all times. There was a moment of liberation after the fact. Like I know I said it was like a weird, awkward sort of like thing after. Mm-hmm. But it got to the point where it was like a thing to revel in. Like it was a fun thing. It was a joyous thing. It was like a good thing.
Right.
Yeah. So I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. Like it wasn't this is good, screw you, church. It was like, this is good. And then separately, the church going, don't do it.
So it sounds like it was more like a crutch or an immediate need, or like Mark says, like it was your opiate. Like,
I don't know if it was like a crutch at that point. Like I said, I think masturbation for me has always been a crutch. And I'm sure sex at some points has been. Definitely when the relationship was less good, it was a crutch for like intimacy. It was like but when the relationship was good, it was just good. And I didn't understand, like in my mind, in my 16-year-old mind, I was like, I'm just going to marry this girl anyways, you know, like fuck it. Pardon the pun.
Yeah. No kidding.
And it was like a fun thing. It was like another part of life that we could share and like talk about. And I was the only person
Sure.
that I was like openly talked about sex with. So
How much do you think that marriage thing played into your like justification for the actions?
it
sex,
helped me. It helped me do the double think.
Okay.
You know, it helped me keep my like Christian identity satiated.
It helped keep the super ego down.
Yeah, and like out of the way.
Yeah. For sure.
There were definitely parts where I was like, why is this, or why is there like this ban?
Yeah.
And to this day, I kind of still don't really, I don't think I've heard like a justification for this forbiddance that I agree with.
Stay tuned next week.
There you go. But I think for me, it was like, it was enough to be like, okay, you can shut up now, Christian Jonathan. And we're just going to do my own thing. So yeah, even if I engaged, even if the values of like purity culture were somewhat involved in my decision making, I never had the norms that went with it, like the behavioral norms. I didn't get the ring. I didn't have like the accountability circles. I didn't talk about my sexual experiences or my masturbatory experiences with anybody. I didn't even like acknowledge the existence of sex really. It was like, that's like a private thing. It was like,
but was that even an option for you? Like at the communities that were open to you and that you were participating in at the time, were they actually imbibing those like purity norms?
I don't,
because I don't think DMC ever had accountability groups.
No, they definitely want to not talk about things.
Exactly. They took the more, you know, if we keep quiet about this long enough,
it'll figure itself out.
Yeah, Pandora's box, it'll close somehow.
Yeah, for sure. So maybe I just didn't have access. But
yeah,
even if,
I think that's a big part of it.
I don't. Yeah, sure. Even if I had access, I don't think I would.
You don't think if there was I don't think so, because like you talk about wanting to.
Yeah, but I would have felt like
wanting to be the worship leader, right? To wanting to have that desire.
It would have been more dissonant for me then. It would have made the reality of my life,
right?
Like it would have created more internal conflict,
right? Just because of how much yourself would be in conflict with those norms.
So maybe if they got to me young, then maybe. Okay.
Right. But like if the pastor at that youth conference where they were like, where, you know, he took the worship leader aside and you were like looking at it and you were like, man, I wish I had that like confessional heart and all this stuff.
Yeah.
That guilt or whatever. I wish I had that. You don't think if he did like an altar call?
No, 100% I know I wouldn't.
Okay.
Because there's been altar calls for like similar things, not like porn or like sex related things. And I felt in my heart, I want to do this. I wish I could be like those people. But I was like, but am I really that person? Am I that guy? You know? Yeah, and I would always, you know, conclude that I'm not him. You know?
So reflective for a young man.
or just that of a very low self-image.
That's interesting. So would you say that I don't know how to say this. Would you say that your perception of sexuality, your sexual ethic, the relationship between sexuality and Christianity for you has changed dramatically over the years, or would you say that it's been fairly static?
So it's hard for me to answer because I think one of the difficulties with like trying to do this topic for me was the church and like Christian conservative type of attitudes have always sort of been in my life. Some definitely more in the forefront, but like sex was one of those things, like water, you know. I was just swimming in it, and I don't exactly know how much, especially because I didn't talk about it with anybody. I don't talk about sex.
Right. Yeah, I noticed.
And so like, because I don't even know what the norm, like in grade 11, I did a talk on sex and it was about how we view sex as society. So even as a grade 11, I was maybe sociological.
That's pretty cool.
I started my presentation in grade 11 with, who's here had sex in this room? And I'm like, minus the teachers, because I know y'all have had sex. And then the teachers were like, Jonathan, just move on to the next one. And I'm like, okay, fine, whatever then.
That's so good.
Yeah. So clearly, as a point of like academic interest, it's always been there.
Okay.
Especially because it felt even more taboo maybe to me.
Yeah.
Because it was so private. And like, I'm a psych guy,
Okay.
you know, I want to know what's going on.
So that's like
But
a
like, yeah.
intellectual interest that's sort of always been there. What about
Yeah.
like in your personal life? Like you talked about how with your high school girlfriend, you had you had this like adventurous hedonism, breadth of experience, and then the conflicting Christian value. Then you get past
Mhm.
21, and now you have more girlfriends. Maybe your outlook on life has changed a little bit. You think you're going to live a little longer, blah, 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 blah. And
Yeah.
now you're having sex again. What are the values
Yeah.
like at this point?
So okay, I think the idea of being other orient, like too other focused or like narrowly other focused,
Okay.
sort of comes back. For me, let me see. Let me even see if I want to share this part. Really.
I've had that thought so many times during this conversation. I'm like, now Jonathan's editing this.
Yeah, at least I get the final cut.
Yeah, and like I'm like, what if I don't remember to tell him?
Yeah. Okay. So like after that relationship, there was a part of me that didn't want to have sex again with anybody
Okay.
else, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because I felt like that was
Special.
not special in like like I felt like it would be a betrayal.
Sure.
Even though like I told, like we were talking on and off throughout, and then like I told her like probably we'll do it, but I knew that it would mean something to her.
Yeah.
Maybe more than me. Maybe not more than me. Maybe I believed my own lie that it didn't, sex stopped meaning things. And then we got to do another trigger warning of like sexual assault here. But like after a while, I found myself in a position where this girl was basically like kind of in my shoes, young me shoes, where they just wanted to experience it. And so like, okay, how we're gonna disentangle masculinity? I fucking no idea from like sex as two cis het boys talking about sex. But
Yeah. That'll be the title of the podcast. Two cis het Christian boys talk about sex.
But yeah, like there was pressure pushed on me by like referencing masculinity. Like I wasn't supposed to say no.
Yeah.
And I did say no. And then the next day it happened and I didn't say no again. And that was one time when I definitely, I have such a disconnect from my body, which is weird because like somatic stuff is like very important in counseling. But anyways, like there was no orgasm to the ejaculation. It was just like, I just wanted it to be over with as soon as possible. I was just like, don't want to do this anymore. So yeah, so that's how that happened.
And so that feels wrong for obvious reasons.
Yeah, but there was no
Right.
like way to engage with like what you were talking about with like the normal sense of normal discussion and dialogue on like sex, because like
Right.
I had a very abnormal experience.
Right. So you're trying to say like you were life sort of off-railed you in terms of like what you would say like an ordinary, like, I don't know, an ordinary sexual path for a Christian, so that you couldn't even, like, you were so far off from
Yeah.
the normal purity dialectic that you were just like, where the hell do I like come back in to like insert myself into the conversation again?
There's no
Right.
room for that kind of stuff. Or like for me, I was just like, we talk about sex like once a year, and there is,
Christmas sermon
yeah, no, there's no even reference
to what
like,
you've experienced.
yeah, the good or the bad, really, like even the high school relationship or the whatever. Like there was just nothing that I could even like attach
That's
to.
great that you say that. That's like the good and the bad.
Yeah, they just said, "Hey, don't do this. This is bad." I'm like, okay,
That's a
like,
a really good point. We don't talk about that enough. Like, why is something that feels so good bad?
But not only that, like it was always so abstract. The discussion was always so abstract. It's like there was no acknowledgement of like the embodiedness of sex.
Really,
you
it was
know, like-
abstract.
Yeah, it was
They're
like,
talking about like they're talking about the platonic forms of the masculine and the feminine. And
they just said premarital sex bad. They kind of did the whole like men are supposed to be like this, women are supposed to be like this, and there was a lot of like gender essentialism happening, and especially like that also pushed me away because it's like I wasn't like I was horny, but I wasn't like, I don't think I was like these like dogs that they like made guys out to be. And I was just like, dude, if I was like, I don't know, mid looking for the right video, and then a notification pops up like from a friend going, hey, you want to play some sudden attacks? I would probably drop that. I'd be like, yeah, sure. I'd probably close the window. I'll get on Skype and then fucking
get on Skype. Yeah.
You know, like I was like, what the fuck are these people talking about? Like, can't control it. It's like, this again goes back to my thesis of there is no such thing as discipline. But
okay, that'll be another episode. But that's really good that you say that. Just that you weren't spoken for in church.
Yeah.
Whereas I felt like that dog. Like I wasn't accepting Skype calls. I was leaving Skype calls, right, to go and masturbate. And sometimes I even do that now. So it's like that's a good point that you made.
Yeah.
Just to really express how much someone cannot be spoken for. That if I'm like the ordinary average case, then there's also congregants and Christians like yourself who just, all of this will be like, most of your reactions in this conversation so far. What?
Yeah, it just doesn't make sense.
How the heck? Okay. Yeah. Well, do you mind if I keep going then chronologically?
Go for it.
What about after that then, when you were in a more like stable, committed relationships after that?
Well, I didn't want to have sex because I don't know.
Okay, so that was a big part of your sexual experience. Yeah. One
could say that.
So that's
but the weird thing is, I also like even when I was like in high school, I knew that sex meant like losing your virginity or whatever, like sex or having had sex meant more for a girl, like societally, not for like an individual girl, maybe. But like, so like go back to when I first lost my virginity, I was like, even though I felt weird about it, I felt like I should attend to my partner. And so again, fucking sometimes you just need no one else around you, you know? Sometimes you just need to be by yourself.
You need to be like Jesus, take to the wilderness.
Yeah. I need to go to the Garden of Gethsemane. You can stay outside, but I just need my me time, you know? And then even the bad experience for me, like I felt, because I was older, I felt like I needed to again attend to the person who had fucked me over, you know?
Yeah.
But like, so I was like, man, that's too much work. Especially when the hedonistic call is not always answered. It's like, I don't even know when it is answered. Like, if I knew these were the conditions in which me coming and me orgasming coincided, it would maybe be a little easier for me to like want to have more sex, because I'm like, I just need to have sex in these parameters. Right.
But you're saying it's such a common occurrence for you for these two things to be separate. That
it's common enough that like, man, it's like,
what's the point?
Yeah, it's like, so it was disconnected for me, and it was already like problematized a little bit.
Right.
I know maybe that's not the use of the word, but
had
like,
the effect of like putting a muzzle on the dog, let's say.
Yeah, and again, definitely not as horny as a lot of guys. You know, I have a low T score. You know, I'm a soy boy. Whatever. Okay,
so there's some like biological nature here as well. Okay.
Yeah, or maybe my psyche is so fucked up it has overridden the biology.
Maybe the psyche maybe was like telling the testes like, okay, guys.
Yeah.
You gotta lower the T.
You gotta wind down production.
You don't need it no more.
Yeah. But yeah, so like that's where I was, and I didn't want to do it because like it felt like it came with more than what I had come to see it was.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Like
yep.
There's a rule in communication that you can never not communicate.
Right. Yeah.
And I didn't know how to go about talking about sex with my partner in a way that we could both know what was being said. But eventually we did it.
And did that feel wrong to you?
The first few times, yeah, like there was again a disconnect between orgasm and ejaculation.
Like I'm asking, like maybe it felt wrong to you for you because of your own, you know, personal experiences. But did it feel wrong to you as a Christian? Did it feel wrong to you morally?
I was agnostic about what the Christian should do by then.
Okay.
Because again,
so you'd work through it intellectually or spiritually for yourself.
I had not worked through it. I just knew that there this dialogue that was happening, and it was so narrow that my experience was completely out of it. So clearly, nobody knows what they're fucking talking about, kind of thing. Like there is no system that I had. I was like venturing into the wilderness.
Your experiences were so real. They hit you with such reality that whatever minutiae they were talking about in church, it didn't hit you. And so it was like, okay, that can't be the answer. That can't possibly be the answer.
That can't be the story.
Because this is so unreal, and what's happened to me is so real.
Yeah.
Is it something like that?
Yeah, like I said, it was always like abstract. It was like
like you said, like, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Like, who do you think
like,
you're talking to?
Like, I'm not one of these other middle classies, okay? Like,
all right. And do you still feel like that?
Yeah, I don't think like you said, like you've noticed I don't really talk about sex or like sexuality much, because I don't like, especially for a person that approaches things like more like sociologically, I guess, like I just don't know if there's like a systematic answer.
Okay.
And so like
what? Yeah. No, go ahead.
So I've, because it's like become a personal thing that just automatically, like in my mind, I guess defaults it to being a private thing.
Right.
And as long as that privacy is honored to some extent, obviously there are limits, and we want to make sure that there are like safeguards to make sure that the abuse of that privacy isn't rampant.
Yeah.
But apart from that, I just don't know how like a sexual ethic can be derived. Like when we were first like bouncing this idea back and forth, I know you said you want to get to a place where we can provide, like have an episode where we talk about like a positive sex ethic, like Christian sex ethic. And I didn't even thought of that. I was just like, we should just deconstruct the fucking bullshit that the church has. And then it's the wild west.
And then leave it to the listeners.
Exactly. Because it's like, that to me makes the most sense, because it's like, you know, with the stuff that we've already done so far with like, you know, becoming black or like Christian nationalism, there is, in my mind at least, whether or not it's properly communicated, who knows, there is some sort of like call to action, like what is happening and what I think is why I think it's problematic, but also like how we can start addressing those problems. For me with sex, it's like, dude, the church needs to fucking back the fuck off is like kind of my attitude, I guess.
Right. So the call to action is more a call to inaction, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Like from what you're saying right now.
I mean, I think the action would be to like maybe revert or like to resolve the issues that we've already created, and then afterwards be maybe more inactive. Just because like, especially with ideas of marriage, and as an anti-statist and as a person who's like maybe thinking we should abolish the institution of marriage, like
okay, you don't have to throw that wrench in here right now,
but that's why
chill out.
So like sexuality, especially like church-based sexuality, becomes really confusing for someone like me who doesn't believe in like the political institution of marriage, to be like, what the fuck does it mean by like premarital or extramarital or whatever?
Oh gosh.
And there is no like legal code in Leviticus about marriage in a way that would translate to a modern world, I would argue. But that's a different...
No kidding.
Yeah.
So this is kind of like seeping into episode 2 of this.
Yeah.
A little bit. But I think you made a really good point there about, just about how one could come to a place where they hold a position similar to yours. And I think that's a really good thing to hear.
Yeah, and hopefully people understand the position I'm coming from. Just because like sex is personal, and as much as I'm okay with offending people with like differing politics than me, to some extent, I don't want to be a dick about it, but like but I think with sex especially, I think it's personal, and I know the sort of like guilt that comes from it. I don't know, it's just a fucking mess. And so I didn't want to like come out swinging in episode 2 with like, this is fucking bullshit, because like you know, hey, we all got the bullshit that we hold on to try to make life a little easier.
Right. But we will do that.
Yeah.
Episode 2 will be a lot of boxing with bullshit. And hopefully we clear some stuff out. And then episode 3, if you're willing, I think offering a positive picture is, because the main reason I want to do that is just because I feel like it's unhelpful to hear the just consent and it's okay. Just as like a as a code of conduct for living your life, as guardrails. It's just like, okay, well, like that doesn't tell me anything. Like that doesn't help me at all. And if there's like, no, I won't. Okay. We'll save it for episode 3.
I was gonna say, how did you go from purity culture and like being pretty like in the purity culture and maybe being even like spoken for in the sense that like you saw some of you represented in the church, or like the church's like sermons and shit,
for sure.
and then converting maybe more strongly into that with the ring and like all these norms of like accountability circles to being like, nah, fam, fuck this ring. I don't know if it was that strong or not.
Was it as strong as, man? Nah, fam, fuck this ring. I think part of it was a nah, fam, fuck this ring. I mean, part of it was similar to the motivating factor for you and your first time was it's like, man, I don't want to die like a manual cunt. You know what I'm saying? Like I want to. I
don't think anyone has said I don't want to die like a manual cunt.
I want to experience the breadth that life has to offer as well. And maybe I was feeling my mortality as well. Like I wasn't feeling young anymore. For sure. I was struggling a lot with what I need to do, what kind of person I want to become, what kind of impact I want to leave on the world. Yeah. And it was like, man, like life moves fast and I might miss this. This like seemingly and something I already agreed upon, huge part of human existence.
Right.
And a failed relationship under my belt at that point and a couple of other, you know, what the kids call situationships now.
Don't know what the fuck that is.
It's just a fling.
Okay.
In Korean, it's a samya.
Why they gotta use more syllables? Back in my day, we had monosyllabic slang.
Yeah, we were efficient. That's why we got things done. That's why we could afford houses.
Hell yeah. So here I am getting fucking kicked out.
Oh man. And so that wasn't small. That was like, okay.
Yeah.
I want to experience sex. So I want to have this good thing with somebody else.
Was it like that explicit for you?
Yeah, like I'm thinking these thoughts.
Okay.
Or something akin to them.
Yeah. When I ask about the explicitness, I meant like the rejection of the purity idea. Was it that clear cut?
Oh, the rejection. Yeah. The rejection of the purity idea was.
Was it that like cognitive?
Yes, it was hugely cognitive. First thing is that I saw for the first time that there wasn't consensus in orthodoxy. That was big, right? I'm like, okay.
What was the thing that you saw?
I don't remember exactly what I saw. I think
it was Dennis Prager.
It was not Dennis Prager. It might have been through my interactions and struggle with the issue of homosexuality in traditional Christianity, because they're adjacent problems, right? They're adjacent issues, and so what applies to one applies to the other, and also learning about overall interpretive structures of scripture, all these sort of more intellectual things push me like, okay, nothing's clear. And then at this point I'm also like, and I always sort of have had an interest in philosophy, and it's one of the ways that I was able to justify my strict U-turn into theology straight out of high school, because that wasn't the original plan, but I justified it to myself. And so a lot of the stuff that I'm now learning in philosophy is also pushing me in this direction, that you know what, okay, it's not so clear cut, this issue. And then a huge thing for me is how I'm thinking through my own sexual identity. And this is big, that I am not sexually pure according to the purity standards.
Right. Even though you haven't had sex.
Yes. Even though I haven't had sex, I am not living a sexually pure life. Right.
Right.
And so even if I'm having all these like intellectual and more academic struggle, and that's a big part of it, but it's like, even if I try it in the realm that I'm already in, the purity realm, it's like I'm already failing. And then I'm thinking also about.
Can you explain that a little more?
Yeah, I'll explain it. But I'm also thinking about Aristotle and virtue ethics, and I'm thinking about how I'm thinking about the thoughts that I've basically already expressed in this podcast already, that masturbation and porn is not helping me. Like it's not making me the person I want to become, and I'm stuck in it, right? Yeah. And I'm not thinking at this time that like sex is gonna save me, and that I'm gonna overcome my problem with porn through having sex with another person. But I do think that it's going to be a better outlet for my sexual drive, my passion. And I was very firmly convinced of that there is very few worlds where it's better for me to sit alone in my basement pleasuring myself instead of having mutual pleasure with somebody else, building a relationship.
Yeah.
And that pushed me over the edge. I got rid of my purity ring, and then I started looking for a partner now with that open to me, that I'm now can have free and open relations with them. God, that sounds so nerdy.
Yeah. It 100% is the most nerdiest fucking
So
talk
nerdy.
about sex.
Fuck.
Yeah.
But the clarification point was,
Yeah.
what was it?
You said that there wasn't consensus, and then there was also this realization that like you aren't hitting the mark.
And that had sort of always been there.
Okay.
Like obviously, right? That's why you have the accountability.
Yeah.
group. That's why you like.
So what was
That's
that
why you-
experience like for you?
I don't know.
Because that's like a big
I
deal.
sort of-
Going from like, hey, no, I can make this work, to like, this is never gonna work, is like a huge.
I
shift.
don't think it was that.
Okay.
I think it was being something about my relationship to like sin, or my theology of sin. Something. I think I started to think more along the lines of like Martin Luther. He has this good quote where he talks about sometimes you have to sin to spite the devil, just to show him that you can. That you're living your Christian life and you're like, oh, I'm gonna be like guilty, and like it's holding you down, it's bogging you down, it's stopping you from living.
So like the shame.
The shame of it.
Yeah.
And he's like, sin. What is the devil gonna do? You are free. Like
right.
the devil has nothing on you. I might be totally botching the context of it, especially because I read it out of context.
You know what? Fuck Martin
but-
Luther anyways, you know?
And you know what? Yeah, fuck Martin Luther anyways. He has another quote where he talks about like, blessed is the man who drinks, for the man who drinks another glass, and another glass leads to another glass, and another glass leads to sleep, and the man who sleeps does not sin, and so blessed is the man who drinks, something like that. And so I basically just started to get more mature.
What would you say the immaturity of your previous
Maybe I was
convictions
too
were?
idealistic.
Ah.
I acquired a realism about the sort of life that was attainable. And maybe a lot of that had to do with like my struggle with like the more spiritual elements of Christianity. My faith has always been very rational and intellectually focused, and so maybe it had to do with that. Like deep down, I didn't believe in the power of the Spirit to change. Like,
right.
you know, people talk about like you're a new creation, like what
Yeah.
it says in like, what is it, Second Rome? Like,
Yeah.
bro,
yeah.
you can do it through the Spirit.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, I didn't completely like, I don't completely give up on that ideal.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, I think the means to me achieving that ideal are different.
Yeah.
Because I definitely think that me, who's now sexually active, is a better person than I would have been if I didn't have sex. I continued to wear the purity ring and was a virgin up until now. And now I'm not saying that
All you virgins are sickos.
virgins are bad, but I might be saying that. I might be committed to this.
But I feel you there, especially with that like new creation stuff. It's like after the third retreat where I quote unquote give up porn and then I'm back at it. It's like I don't feel all that new. And I agree with you. There's a part of me that's reinterpreted that passage in a more meaningful way. But yeah, so
Yes.
so you go through this experience of like, I know I'm not living up to it, but hey, maybe I can like become this new creation. It's not happening, and at a certain point, you're like, you also have an outlet with like other people or voices of dissent, I guess.
Yes.
And then you're like, hey, actually, it is reasonable or rational to be able to think differently on this issue.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. And then eventually I got a new girlfriend, and we had sex, and I had sex for the first time, and I didn't feel any guilt.
Ah, whoa.
Yeah.
Was this partner shared like similar Christian values?
No, she wasn't a Christian.
Okay.
And, which was, I mean, honestly nice
Mhm.
in the fact that she didn't have this baggage,
Yeah.
and she was a lot more experienced than I was. And so that was a blessing at the time.
Yeah.
But I often reflect that it was like a blessing that I had all the time to process all of it. Like I wasn't, okay, I'm living as a Christian, I have this purity ring, I end up having sex, now I have this purity ring on my finger. Who am I? Like I'm a phony, I'm a hypocrite, dealing with all this guilt and shame. But the fact that I was like, no, I stuck out to my conviction. And then
Yeah.
that conviction was challenged in a multitude of different ways. And then I decided, okay, no, this conviction no longer fits me, no longer suits me. I take off the ring and then I have sex. And I was also older at this point, right? I had sex for the first time fairly late when I was like 21-ish or 22. And so I definitely felt a lot more mature. And from what I hear from a lot of people about their first time experiences, it's like, wow, it was so bad and this didn't fit and this didn't make sense and didn't feel good or anything, like all that. And obviously there's those awkwardnesses.
Yeah.
And it's not like, I don't think anybody's first time is like the best sex of their life, you know what I'm saying? But definitely it felt good. It felt right.
Yeah. At least one of you knew what was happening.
For the most part.
Yeah.
For the most part. I think it wasn't completely guilt-free, but I don't think for spiritual reasons. I think I felt a little guilty that I was using this person for sex because of my new, relative to that time period, newly changed convictions. So it was like, like I want to, you get a new car, you want to go test on the highway, right?
Oh, God.
That's a bad, that wasn't like, it wasn't supposed to be, it wasn't objectifying. It wasn't objectifying the woman. The woman wasn't the car. The experience was the car.
Okay.
Just to clarify.
Nice save. But yeah, okay.
So I did have guilt, but it wasn't guilt relating to who I was as a Christian.
Yeah.
That had been pretty.
And how like assured were you that you had not just taken a whiff of copium, to have sex?
I think I was assured that taking a whiff of copium is like inevitable, something like that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's like you cannot live in fear of the copium, right? You just have to strive and plow forward, move forward.
What was the reason that made sense to you back then to be pure? Mm-hmm. Was it just that like this was the Christian thing to do and so you have to do it? Or was there something else that you had and then realized didn't apply anymore? I
mean, I think I sort of drank the Kool-Aid on all the benefits of staying pure, quote unquote, such as healthier sex life, vibrant marriage, and all these things.
So it wasn't like purity for purity's sake. It was like...
Well, that too.
Okay.
That too, of course. And I don't think I necessarily disagree with the functional or second order goods that come from staying pure. I'm probably agnostic, but I think for me in my personal life, my first relationship, or we'll say first serious relationship straight out of high school, failed. And that relationship was supposed to culminate in marriage, right? I was 18 and I proposed to my then 22-year-old girlfriend. Yeah. That was not the smart thing to do. Don't do that, kids. But obviously purity culture had a lot to do with that. And
in what sense?
Well, the promise that it was going to be okay. Actually, maybe not even like purity culture, but Christian culture in general. Because one of the things that I was believing at the time was that if they're a Christian, it'll work. If we have the same values on the spiritual front, which, by the way, you don't. Like, unless you're going through like doctrinal statements.
Yeah, just because they're Christian or Protestant.
Just because they're Christian, just because they're mainline Protestant does not mean that they have the same values. I think Protestants in general have the hardest time with this because they're very, I'm sorry to say, like uneducated on the church and general theology outside of their own denomination.
Or even inside their denomination.
They don't even know what patristics are.
I don't know what patristics are.
Study of the church fathers. Come on.
That's
study of the church father
shit right there.
And their theology.
Miss me with that Catholic shit.
Yeah, exactly, dude. And that's what like, some girl's gonna be like, yeah, I believe in the holiness and sanctity of the Bishop of Rome, and they're gonna be like, oh yeah, we can make that work. Like, no, that might be a dividing issue. Anyways, so yeah, I thought I can make it work. Doesn't end up working, and now sex is put off for a while. As I start to be more realistic about relationships. Now it's like, okay, now I'm probably getting married around like 30, like if I'm lucky.
There was this hidden assumption that I didn't even realize. Throughout this whole purity culture thing, I was like, wait till marriage, but marriage is like relatively soon.
Well, okay, for a lot of people.
Yeah. And also.
It can be.
And also, marriage is easy if you follow these steps that we're giving you, kind of thing.
And the sexual element of marriage is going to be even better now that you've saved yourself. And
okay.
you're
Yeah,
not,
for me, that was definitely
and you're not carrying any of that baggage.
Yeah. See, this is the type of kid I was. I thought I was going to get married to this girl in high school. And a part of me was like, my parents are divorced. I'm like, there was a part of me that was like, I could do better than my parents. And there was also a part of me that was like, no, and then we'll get divorced at like 45 or something. But it'll be a good run, It'll be a good enough run for me.
A good run. Yeah.
Like, that was where I was at. Maybe that's why this promise of a good marriage, this purity shit literally found no purchase. None of the consequences they were promising found any purchase with me. Because I was like, it's going to go bad sooner or later, Like,
right. Actually, it's funny that you mentioned divorce, because I think that was another thing that I was thinking as well, because my mom is divorced and divorced a second time. And I see divorced people all around me. And then I see successful relationships happening after that. And then I also see people failing in marriages, not having had any previous relationships. Yeah. And so those, the promises of purity, we'll say, start to sort of cave underneath themselves as well. It's crumbling for sure. And I don't think I had this nuanced of an understanding of it then, but now I would say something along the lines of what the Bible gives is wisdom, and wisdom is broad in general to fit specific circumstances. And we'll definitely get into this in the second episode, because this interpretive principle definitely helps a lot. Okay, maybe foreshadowing to the third episode of what a positive Christian sexual ethic could look like going forward. From my personal experience, I did not feel guiltless about all the sexual contact that I had after making the decision to start to have sex in my life.
Like spiritually guiltless.
I never caught a case, if that's what you're asking. Like,
no. I meant like, because you said the first time
legal guilt.
The first time you had sex, it was like you didn't feel like spiritually convicted,
yes.
but you had some like moral.
Well, so
questions.
For now, I'll just keep the spiritual and the moral together. But that sexual experience was within a committed relationship. So she was my girlfriend. Eventually, I go on to have sexual relations with people who aren't my girlfriend. That didn't feel as good. That didn't feel guiltless to me. It didn't feel as good. Like
that didn't feel as good.
That did. Okay.
It could be read so poorly.
Come on, this is serious. Okay.
I'm sorry.
It didn't feel. Sure, it didn't feel as good physically. Sure, that's true too. But it didn't sit. What I'm trying to say is it didn't sit as cleanly and as nicely when I had sex that first time, and then many times after that within the committed relationship.
I see.
It was almost like I had entered into how I felt and feel with porn and masturbation.
How yeah, you lost me.
There was a guilt. There's the guilt that resurfaced that I thought was gone. That guilt resurfaced.
Okay.
Right?
Oh, okay.
And it's Slavoj Žižek. He has this thing where he talks about sex without love is mutual masturbation.
That's what I'm saying. So might as well. QED.
And I think it was something like that, where it was like, I feel like I just used this person for my own physical pleasure, and now I'm never gonna see them again. Like that doesn't sit well with me. It didn't sit well with me. It still doesn't sit well with me. And so maybe that's some foreshadowing for where I feel like a positive sexual Christian ethic could go. Yeah.
I think we should talk maybe a little bit more about the parameters a little bit, because we're, again, cis het men.
Yeah.
We probably won't be talking about like homosexuality, because that feels like
that'll have to be a whole other episode.
And then we probably, even as much as we allude to gender and gender roles, that will definitely not be the focus.
Another episode.
Yeah, because it just complicates things so much. And I know to just default to heteronormative shit is the shit.
Yeah, all the queer theorists in the background are like, what the hell?
And maybe it is more informative to look at the boundaries, but like we just don't have that standpoint.
Yeah, and I think that was one of the purposes of doing this episode, is we can only talk about what we know.
Yeah.
And what we know is the cis heteronormative male Christian experience.
But yeah, I think especially with something as personal as sex, I think it would be good to just speak, or like at least speak from a place where we have not just like academic resources that we can draw on, but like personal experiences to like recap our positions a little bit. So I think I'm definitely like antagonistic, like you were saying, about the church's position. I don't think the church has demonstrated standing to have a position.
Interesting. Okay.
Because I don't think they've, at least from my experience with sermons and shit, there's no hermeneutics that they've justified to
And
take.
you want to use like capital C church there or lowercase
Probably
d?
capital C, just because I haven't
Capital C,
seen.
okay.
It's not like I go out of my way to look for.
You haven't seen
Yeah,
otherwise.
I
Hasn't been falsified yet.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
So that's, I think, a main thing. I think personally, and this one maybe I knew definitely, I'm not super masculine. I low T soy boy shit, but I also don't enjoy sex as much as society said I would enjoy it, which was
Right.
kind of a disappointment. I'm like, I've come to a position where I'm definitely very sexually permissive. Like, I think if we work on issues of like self-worth or like belonging, or like we meet people's needs for validation, I don't think, like, I personally, like, before we even get to episode 3, don't think we need to have a sexual ethic, because I think people will figure that shit out. Emotionally mature adults can figure that shit out in like beautiful ways that like are going to be non-imaginable for me.
Right.
That being said, I think that involves like realities where sexually mature or like emotionally mature people still masturbate or like have one night stands or whatever. I don't think it's going to be like as frequent as we have today, but I also don't want to like pathologize that kind of behavior, because I think there's non-harmful ways to engage. But we'll see. I mean, we'll see if my mind gets changed or not. Well, going forward. So that's
What is that? That's the next episode. Change my mind.
change my mind. Do whatever you want. You know, be a good person first, and then do whatever you want, kind of thing.
Oh,
Yeah, or maybe
What
not
is
even
that?
a good
That's
person.
that's the Augustine. Love and do as you please. Was that
Some-
Augustine?
I
Was
I
that
don't-
was that Luther?
It better not be Luther, dude. It better not be Luther. But yeah, maybe not even be a good person. Just like figure yourself out. Be
I agree with
authentic,
the sentiment. There's no need for a sexual ethic if you follow love and do as you please. But unfortunately, like it's not. We don't live in the New Jerusalem,
You know?
right?
Not yet.
We don't. We're still cultivating it.
Yeah.
Or hopefully, I mean that's what we should be doing as Christians, right? Cultivating the New Jerusalem, bringing heaven to earth.
That's a good point. I think like given that my position of like break it all down sort of will, make sense for episode 2.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess for episode 3, I don't know. I
mean, that'll be good to see. That'll be good to see, because then we have at least 2 positive ethics, right? To listener to pick and choose from,
Sure. I guess, how would you summarize your position?
Okay, yeah. Summarizing my position. I don't want to pull in too much from the next 2 episodes, but I guess I'll just simply state it as I think Christians should have more sex than they're having. Non-married Christians should have more sex than they're having. As I sort of outlined in my position near the beginning of the podcast, I think more goods, more virtue, more character is built from it, and that Christians are not living up to the sexually pure lifestyle. That might be is-ought problem here, that I'm saying these are the way things are, these are the way things should be, but I'm not just going to say it. I'm going to argue for it. I'm going to argue and bring out the goods and also the bads of the alternative.
Yeah. And I think going from your experience, you talked about like, it's not just the fact that you were impure by those standards. It was the fact that perceived impurity led to like a shame that probably wasn't all that Christian or wasn't healthy to your Christian development.
No, definitely not. That sounds right. Yeah. I think I'll leave it at that, just because I don't want to say too much, because I have a lot to say in episodes 2 and episodes 3. I'll just make it simple and say that I'm fairly sexually permissive relative to my other Christian friends, but I think that I have good reasons for that, both biblical and philosophical.
Yeah. Would you say you're sexually permissive relative to your non-Christian friends?
No. To my non-Christian friends, I'm probably a bit conservative.
Okay.
Or how I think about sexuality might be a very average
Mm.
or the uncontested, just,
Yeah.
you know, fresh out of the box, what do you believe about sexuality
Right.
sort of thing. The default,
Okay.
that's the word. Wait, so you're going to move this to the front, or you're going to keep this here?
I think this will be our
Okay.
outro essentially, because I think this essentially serves as the cold open. This whole episode serves as the cold open to episode 2.
Perfect. Welcome back to Post-Denomination, the fake church service run by a Phil grad student and seminarian in hopes to dunk and debunk the funky shit that sometimes comes with Christianity a la carte. My name is Connor, joined as always by Jonathan, and today we're talking about sex.
Alrighty, let's fucking do it.
Okay. Do you think any of that is usable? Like, I don't know.
I don't know. Maybe. Okay, so announcements. Same old, reading list down below. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, difficulties accessing the material, don't hesitate to reach out. We are on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, YouTube, all that jazz. I think the next episode might be a little delayed, but yeah, we'll see you when we see you.
Shouldn't we, like, say something before? Like, do you want to say something before this? Or, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, like,
I don't know. Do you have anything else?
yeah, just like, now it's not natural.
No,
but I was gonna be
yeah.
like, man, that like went really well. Like,
Oh,
I think that was a really good conversation. Like on the level of the one we had in the car the other day.